Breaking Points, they're through for their lockdowns. Jimmy Dore, you're a liar. I get why you lie. You lie so that you can make money. People eat it up. It's the red meat. They suck it up. Jimmy Dore, did you look at that?
She doesn't know anything.
Holding the records back for 75 years like his dad's.
Nothing. She's not skeptical or suspect that she's being lied to by Big Pharma, the government, the captured FDA, the regulatory agencies. She's not skeptical of it. She's skeptical of RFK Jr., and she doesn't know why.
Jimmy Dore, and he's talking about RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
And their interview with that he did on Breaking Points with Krystal Ball and Sagar. Is that his name? Sagar.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, which is a good show. I like that show. I've seen it before, and I like Krystal Ball, but I have some opinions about the interview that took place there. And obviously, Jimmy Dore had a really strong opinion too. He had a great piece about it, and I know you have some of your own opinions about what went on there and what Jimmy Dore had to say.
Krystal did what's called the opposite of journalism. She pushed talking points from Big Pharma that are lies, and she's uninformed, ignorant, and arrogant. And she doesn't give RFK Jr. She makes accusations and then talks over him and doesn't allow him to answer the questions. And when he asks, "So what am I wrong about?" she won't tell him.
So the first thing I want to ask you is like, I think this is like the first part we got to deal with, which is like, what is the proper way to interview a presidential candidate? You know, so it's like, what's the sort of to be fair, what are the different parameters? I just want to cover that just a little bit. And I'll start with you first. Tell me what you think is the most important thing.
Well, we saw a pretty good interview that they did on CNN with Donald Trump just recently. They did the town hall, and what was her name? Caitlin something. Yeah. So that was kind of a good starter to like how an interview should go with a presidential candidate. But I think she did it really poorly. Like, I think some of her problems were she interrupted him a lot. She refuted things that he was saying. So she was coming from her own biased perspective rather than just getting his opinions as a presidential candidate. And I think when we're voting on people, we really want to hear what the person has to say. And if you're interrupting, then we don't get an idea of who we could potentially vote for. And it's hard to not input some of your bias, as an interviewer or whatever, but as a journalist, it's best to really keep that out as much as you can.
Okay. So make sure that you're, I guess, not biased or you don't mention your bias or whatever.
Well, I think it's normal to be a little bit biased and have a position, and it's okay to ask pressing questions. And I think it's even okay to sort of bring up some counterpoints, because that's what the voters are curious about, is those counterpoints, these other ideas, and how the potential candidate is going to respond to those things. But you really got to keep your bias out of it as much as possible and try to come at it from a neutral perspective, just like we would want voters to come at it. But your bias is going to get in there as an interviewer.
Right.
And I think it's okay to have a little bit of your personality come through. But the interrupting thing, not letting the person say their piece, that's really bad style for interviewing.
Okay. So is there ever a point when you should be able to interrupt somebody, or do you think you should never interrupt somebody? Or what's the idea behind that? Like, should we never interrupt, or should we? Because I could think of various scenarios when things could be really bad if you don't interrupt, but then, so how do you feel about that? Like,
in general, it's a bad idea to interrupt, because if you interrupt as an interviewer, then the person who's getting interviewed has the right to interrupt you. And then there's not actually a discussion or trading of ideas going on. So I think interrupting somebody, cutting somebody off when they're presenting their ideas, their thoughts, whether you disagree or not, or whether you have counter facts or whatever, or counter information, then I think interrupting in general, for the most part, is a really bad idea.
Okay. That's fair enough. Okay. That's cool.
What do you think? Yeah. What do you think?
Okay. So I'm going to give my opinion. So basically kind of the way I think where you're coming from is what I would call this idea of being neutral, right? And neutrality seems like a good thing, but sometimes it can actually be worse than actually having an actual opinion. So I'll give you an example. Like if you're doing the interview, but of course the type of questions you ask could be slanted in a certain way, right? It could be slanted to get what you want from the interviewer. You know what I mean? And so if the person doesn't tell you where they're coming from, you don't know which side they're on. I think it's better to know what side they're on so that you're aware, oh, this station is doing or this show is doing this thing, and they're explaining where they're coming from. So all of us know, okay, this is like regardless if you're whatever side you're on, you at least know, okay, Krystal Ball doesn't agree, or these are the areas where she doesn't agree with RFK, right? So these are the areas she doesn't agree with. And so now you know, which I like. I think that's important. Like you should say what it is, and then of course give them the opportunity to explain themselves. Give them the opportunity to explain, what their positions are, especially for as a presidential candidate. That's really important, right? See, we want to know where they're coming from. And on the interruption part of it, when I watched it back, I noticed that there's a couple different issues. So I think there's interruptions from both of them. Like I definitely saw interruptions from RFK to Krystal. You know what I mean? Especially in the very beginning, and then later on, I saw her doing that to him. So I think you're right. In general, it's better not to interrupt. But I'm going to give you some ideas to maybe when it's okay to interrupt. So the first one is when you ask the question and you're not getting a direct answer, then it's okay to interrupt. So let me give you an example. Like if I ask you, what's your position on abortion, right? And then you start you start saying, well, my document, that I wrote, it says in there, and have you read it? Have you, you know what I mean? Like, and then I can go, no, 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 no. I'm asking you for your position. What's your position? See, so it's the person who's doing the interviewing has a little bit of control as far as what the information is to come out. Now, the opposite can happen. The person who's being interviewed can also push back and say that's a stupid question, or that's, you know what I mean? They can come back and say, hey, that's irrelevant, right? So there can be a little bit pushback back and forth, but I think in general, like they should pretty much like keep it, respect each other, allow the person to talk and that sort of thing. What do you think about what I'm saying so far?
Yeah, you're coming up with a reason to interrupt, which is basically if you ask somebody a question and you're asking for a direct answer and they're kind of talking around the question,
Yeah.
then you interrupt to kind of get them refocused on the question that you actually asked.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Now the second thing, which Jimmy Dore kind of brings up, and it's almost like he makes us this what's that word? Where you're against somebody, like it's one versus the other. You know what I mean? It's like it's Krystal or Breaking Points against RFK. That's the way from his perspective, that's what it appears to be, right? But the thing is that it's a give and take of ideas. You know what I mean? And so she asked him, okay, so um, I guess basically the contentious part was the part on the vaccines, right? And so what I feel like is that she is stating something that's totally factual. She's stating first her opinion that she doesn't think that, for instance, autism, or excuse me, the vaccines lead to autism, and she goes into details about how the yes, there's some people who are, anti, like COVID vax, but there's understandable some reason why some people are not that on that position. And so basically, she explains where she's coming from, and she states the fact that there's a lot of people on her side, which is totally true, right? Now, Jimmy Dore tries to say, oh, even people in your own comments, even people in your own, like, sort of like on your own show, were saying, that they were against you, right? So Jimmy Dore's correct that there was a lot of comments in the comment section. But think of it this way, right? The majority of people are not anti-vax. Okay, that's just a fact, right? That's not true. But at the same time, when they, if you were to come out and say, oh, I'm against vaccines or for whatever reason, um, at least for me, like I think for most people, I'm not going to click on that video. I'm not going to care. Like, I know there's people who are anti-vax or anti whatever, you know what I mean? Like, that's not going to draw an audience. But the anti-vax audience is huge, right? They have a huge platform. And so, of course, Jimmy Dore taps into that so that he can make money, right? That's all, you know what I mean? It's audience capture, right? He knows, which I don't blame him, right? It's like, hey, I can make some money here, right? So you see that if you watch Jimmy Dore, he never like says things that will be against what his viewers are going to expect from him. He always just gives them, that red meat, you know what I mean? Every time, every once in a while, maybe he pushes back a little bit.
So let me ask you about vaccines. This is an area.
Guys, come on, guys. Guys, we're going to guys.
Where you and I have significant differences. And, just to level with you on this, like a lot of what you say I really respond to. I think you're a very genuine person. But the across the board, whether you want to call it vaccine skepticism or anti-vax advocacy, which has been a central part of what you've been up to for the past number of years, for me personally, it's an issue, and it's a real sort of red line. And I know I'm not alone in that, especially running in a Democratic primary. There are going to be other millions of people like me who have similar concerns. So how do you win them over? What's your message to people who think like I do?
Well, but just tell me where you think I got it wrong.
Well, I think
that's not coming. Okay, here we go.
You get it wrong when you draw a correlation between the rise of things like autism and the introduction of vaccines when there isn't hard scientific evidence tying those things together.
A correlation. There is a correlation.
Yeah, there is a correlation.
Doesn't mean
she
causation.
meant causation.
Yeah.
So she throws that out there, and he's ready to back it up. He's certainly ready. Let's watch.
How do you know there's not a hard scientific evidence?
Well, because the one major study that purported to show that was retracted, and the scientist who conducted it was,
Now, what you're doing now,
basically
Krystal,
fraudulently created. Listen,
no.
Hold on.
You're
But
raising this issue.
I don't want to get in a debate with you about this because you've spent your life.
Because he would embarrass you because you don't know anything about what you're talking about. And that's why you don't want to get into a debate. And you are sure you don't want to get into a debate, because if you got into a debate, everybody would, even more than we know now, we would reveal that you know nothing. People would know that you know nothing about what you're talking about. You haven't read any of the studies, and he would clean your clock, which is why you're doing such a dishonest and amateur. Well, it's not. It's a hack. This isn't an amateur interview job. This is a hack job. And that's what she's doing.
You've got to be putting things in there that's going to make people happy, and so sometimes that drives the narrative. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that you're right. You could say the same thing though about the Krystal Ball perspective.
Exactly. Yeah,
she's definitely pushing a narrative.
Right. Yeah. So what is her narrative? She
seemed to have a contention about RFK is kind of pushing the idea that he believes that there's some link between autism and traditional vaccines.
Okay.
And then also she's pushing back against the idea that the COVID vaccine, or I like to call it just the mRNA injection, was not effective, and so she seemed to be pushing against that. And I think that that's her narrative.
Well, first of all, I'm not leading with my opinions about vaccines. But what I say to people is, show me where I got it wrong. Show me where I got my science wrong. I've written books about this. I wrote a book about a link between thimerosal and autism that has, I think, 450 distilled scientific studies that confirm and validate that hypothesis, and 1,400 references. And if I got something wrong, show me where it is.
But I think people have shown you where things are wrong.
No,
I just won't.
I'm just not going to do it. I won't do it because I don't know what I'm talking about. And listen to what she said. Listen to this garbage. First of all, she's interrupting him again. And second of all, she won't show him what he got wrong so they can have an honest conversation about it. She's just doing broad stroke smears. And then when he actually starts to respond, she just talks over him and interrupts him.
Where it is.
But I think people have shown you where things are wrong, but you don't want to hear it. Is because I've seen, new.
Krystal, did you just say that you think people have shown him where he's wrong and he doesn't want to hear it? Because that's weird, because he just literally said that he'd like to hear where he's wrong. He just literally said that. I'd like to hear where I'm wrong. And instead of you telling him where he's wrong, you tell him he doesn't want to hear the thing he just said that he wanted to hear. Actually, it sounds like you, Krystal, don't want to hear it.
All it is it's just her stating her opinion where she's at. She said the majority of people are not anti-vax, right? So that's just factually correct. So that's the first thing, right? And then she is asking him, well, since you know there's going to be people that may not agree with you, what is your position? Okay, so, when people say that to you, what is your, and so she's giving him the platform to speak about those issues. And it's important because, there are going to be people that may be against him. And my feeling is, like, I'm really happy that Breaking Points gave him the interview. Let's look at the facts here. They talked for 49 minutes. It wasn't just about the vaccines. It was about various issues. Now, all the other stations, MSNBC and CBS, they didn't give him 49 minutes to speak, right? At all, right? So they're giving him a platform to do his thing. And for the most part, there wasn't that much contention except for when they got to, that one area, And the idea is for him to talk about, what his beliefs are. And so I want to ask you, what was the first thing that he said when he was asked that question? Let's see if you remember.
He said, I'm not leading with that as a candidate that's running. I'm not leading with the vaccines, my position on the vaccines. Yeah.
Right. But there was actually something even slightly before that part. You're right about that. But the other part was, he said, show me where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Show me where I'm wrong. Okay.
Because she said I disagree with your stance on it. Yeah.
Now,
and so he was asking her, why do you disagree? Where am I wrong that makes you disagree? Because she brought up that she disagrees first.
Correct. She disagrees first. Yeah. And then she asked him to give his reasons for why he believes the way he does. And his answer is, show me where I'm wrong. Right? And I'm going to tell you, nowhere ever is that the right response. You should never say, show me there. Oh yeah, of course there's certain times when show me where I'm wrong would make sense. If you and I, let's say I'm a scientist, I'm talking to other scientists. They've already read, what I wrote. So it's in context, right? So that's different, right? So they know what I wrote, I know what they wrote. And so we're comparing notes, but this isn't the case, right? You have to understand, Robert F. Kennedy is speaking to the American people. So when he says, show me where I'm wrong, that doesn't mean anything.
What you just said about me, that I'm sort of hard-headed and stubborn and just won't give in, you're wrong about that. If somebody shows me where I'm wrong, I'm going to correct it.
So he said, I wrote a book that links between dimersaryl and autism, and he did 450 studies.
Oh, dimersaryl or something?
Yeah, dimersaryl. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Once he said that, honestly, I want him to do well. Believe it or not, I would vote for him over Biden, right? I want him to actually get his message across. That's great. He should be allowed to be on the debate stage, which the Democratic Party isn't letting anybody on there except for, Biden. He's not, you know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah,
really?
Exactly. Oh. So that's not a very democratic process, to do
That's kind of messed up. Yeah.
Right. So my point is that when he gets into that detail, he starts talking about that. That is what he should have led with. That's all I'm saying. This isn't about me putting down Robert F. Kennedy. This is actually me saying, hey, when you're asked a certain question, So then what happened was, because he wasn't answering these questions directly, then I think it kind of made her upset. Like it was like, hey, I want this sort of type of show, you know what I mean? And I don't want to, because here's the problem. If they go back and forth with the studies and say, well, this person said this study, first of all, most people don't know anything about the studies. So it's really dumb. Like, if you go back and forth talking about studies, like, just explain why you believe the way you do. That's it. And it's not about who's right or wrong. Like, I don't care. I want him to be able to, even if I don't 100%, like, I might be coming from the standpoint of, like, I'm not going to, like, my beliefs are already set. Like, I don't, I think that, for instance, the vaccine didn't cause autism. People have had vaccines, from way back when, and that's the science of it, right? But you know what? If he has his reasons for it, I am open to listening. I'm not saying I'm like everybody else. There's going to be people that are going to be closed-minded, but the guy's got a pretty good, like, as far as his poll numbers, it's up there. It's at least, I think, maybe 20% or something. I mean, he could very much, do better than Biden, right? So I'm just feel like he should be given the opportunity to speak and to say. But if, again, there's that thing of, like, if someone's asking you a direct question and you don't answer it, then it's like, yeah, I sort of understand the interruptions and the pushbacks a little bit. That's all.
Well, he did talk about the links, and then he talked about the studies. He said he wrote a book about it, but he was kind of saying, in a way, maybe he was kind of wanted to avoid the question because he knows it's sort of contentious among a lot of people, especially people of certain political persuasions.
Yeah.
So maybe he kind of wants to avoid that in a sense, but he seemed to
Yeah.
be honest about it, and he said that he was open-minded, and then he would change
Yeah.
his mind if presented with evidence. And her claim was that she said, well, I think you've heard the reasons why people disagree with you, but I think maybe you just don't want to hear it. And the way
Yeah.
I took that was kind of her projecting, because I felt that was kind of her position, is that here he is
Yeah.
giving her studies and saying, I
That
wrote
was
this book, and she's
right.
actually the one that doesn't want to hear the conflicting evidence to her own ideas.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit contentious, you know what I mean, so to speak.
I
Yeah.
think that Krystal Ball, I've seen her do interviews with other people, and I think I like her style generally. I think that something just kind of she kind of let her guard down in a sense because she has this really strong position,
Yeah.
and I think people felt like she's really pushing a narrative without having evidence. She's just very emotional behind it. I think at one point she even said, I think she said she vaccinated her kids. I don't know if she meant her kids or other parents had vaccinated their kids. I don't know if she has
Yeah.
kids or not.
But see, is
But so I
my
think she has
yeah.
something at stake here in this, like, all vaccines are good and trust the science. And I think that kind of came through. I think that's what people are really reacting to, is
Yeah.
that she was pushing her own narrative, her own ideas,
Right.
rather than being open-minded to this other perspective, which she usually does on other topics. She usually seems to
Yeah.
be pretty open-minded.
Yeah. Again, it's, I guess maybe this might sound weird, but I just feel like, if you, doing an interview, and you're stating, for in front of the audience, you're saying, hey, this is my bias, like, this is my beliefs, right? And then after that, saying, how can, she's basically saying, can you convince other people, or give me your opinion on it, like, why do you think that? And I just don't think saying, show me where I'm wrong, is just a horrible, it's not a very good thing. And then there was another part that he said, which was, um, I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh yeah, I've got the fact checkers. Like, I've got the people that verify. They work for me and they verify. It kind of remind me of Trump a little bit. When they'll ask him questions and he'll say, I know the business people. Like, I'm, like a kind of a, like, showing off. Like, I worked with all these. But the thing is, like, if he really knows this stuff by heart, right? He should have had, like, a statement that he could have said. I mean, that sounds a little slicker, you know what I mean? It's just a little more like he's got it together. That's all. And the weird part is like, it's very possible that, like, he has all the answers and he has the exact reason why vaccines are horrible, not just for the COVID, but just like in general. Like, but the thing is it's not enough to have the truth. You've got to. The crazy part is you got to be able to express and get your ideas across. And you mentioned that with Fetterman. You've got some. There's something about that, right? You've got to be able to express yourself in a way that people can understand. You know what I mean? So yeah. So then let's go over. What do you think about talking about Jimmy Dore just a little bit? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, he came down on this situation pretty hard, on Krystal Ball pretty
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
So, I mean, I totally get it though, right? Because it's like I said before in the very beginning, it's all about the money, right? So, he's gonna do what he's got to do. He's like a professional smear merchant, is what he is, right? He loves to smear people, right? People he doesn't agree with, he throws them all into a camp. So it's Breaking Points, and more specifically, Krystal Ball, is part of the what is it, the big state, and Fosse loving, whatever, just like basically everyone you want to hate, you know what I'm saying, like everything. That's a horrible show. Like he said, let me just read this here, I wrote it down here. Let's
I mean,
see,
you're
what is
calling
it?
him a smear merchant. I think that's and my first thought was like, I don't really agree with that, but I kind of
That's
see where you're
okay.
coming from. I kind of
So
do agree in a sense. Yeah.
yeah,
He's an
and you know what,
entertainer. He's pushing aside. He does present a lot of information to back up the points that he's making. So he's trying to be educational at the same
yeah,
time, but it's more of an entertainment comedic kind of show.
sure.
Yeah.
The thing is that like there's some people who deserve to be smeared, right? So like there's sometimes when smearing, and I'm not saying it in a negative way, like I mean, for his audience, they're
A good
entertained by
smear.
it, right? I mean, if you're smearing someone and you're being truthful about it, what you're saying, then I have no problems with it. But the thing is that some of the stuff that I can't find it in my notes here. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, here we go. He was saying that she buys into RussiaGate, right? That's one thing. Oh, RussiaGate, right? Go back and look at the video. You'll see that COVID. Oh, everything. The lockdowns. Like basically all of the breaking points. That's their angle, so it's automatically biased. They're Russiagate, COVID, lockdowns, that kind of stuff, right? So I just want to do a little research. We'll bring it up on here, and I'm going to show you exactly what Breaking Points has done, and we'll see if it matches up. We'll see if she's, follows, like a regular establishment, follows the rush, just she's against lockdowns, or she's whatever, not against lockdowns, for
Like
lockdowns, you know
pro
what I mean,
lockdown.
like
Yeah.
for authoritarian kind of stuff, for the Russiagate. All right.
She's not skeptical or suspect that she's being lied to by Big Pharma, the government, the captured FDA, the regulatory agencies, or their corporate bought media. She's not skeptical of it. She's skeptical of RFK Jr., and she doesn't know why. She's skeptical because she's been told to be skeptical, and she doesn't actually think for herself. She's being told. That's why she went along with Russiagate, which is why she went along with lockdowns, why she went along with mandates, why she's doing this right now.
And obviously Jimmy Dore has his own bias too. I mean,
That's fine.
he said that he was injured. He had an injury from the mRNA injection.
Yeah, and that's understandable. He can say what he wants. Okay,
Well,
so
it's not that he's saying that. I mean, we have to believe him that maybe. I mean, he believes that he was injured from that.
yeah, I got no problems with that. But what I'm about to show you here
Yeah.
is we're just trying to see if what he's saying about Breaking Points or Krystal has some accuracy. Okay. So
Or was he just smearing her in the moment just to make her look really bad?
exactly. So first of all, I'll do lockdowns. We'll just see. That's just, I don't even know. I didn't even verify if what I'm saying is correct, but I think I looked at a couple things. But okay, here we go. Lockdown. I'm going to read these titles off. Lockdowns to blame for RSV, flu, COVID outbreaks. Lockdowns to blame. Lockdowns to blame. First thing right there, lockdowns to blame. That doesn't sound like a establishment idea, does it? Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the reason why I'm scrolling is because these are like unrelated to the lockdown. So that's, I'm not trying to jerk cherry. Okay, here we go. Fauci opens door for Omicron lockdown. Fauci opens door. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but whatever. Dystopian scenes from Shanghai's total COVID lockdown. Dystopian scenes. That doesn't sound like a pro lockdown, but that's what he said. He said, breaking points, they're for their lockdowns. All right, I think I've made my point. What do you think? You want to check one more? Should I do one more?
Let's check one more.
Let's check one more. Okay. Let's see. Krystal and Sagar reacts to failed DeSantis. Okay, that's not even related. Fauci rewrites history on pandemic lockdowns. Rewrites history. That doesn't sound a positive thing on Mr. Fauci over here, does it? It sounds like they're like not with him exactly 100%. Okay, so Jimmy Dore, you're a liar. You're an absolute liar. And there it is. There's the proof. But I get why you lie. You lie so that you can make money. It's profitable. And people eat it up. It's the red meat. They suck it up. You know what I'm saying?
You're making a pretty good argument, I think.
All right. Well, let's go try another one. So maybe it's just this issue. Maybe the Russiagate issue. She's real strong for Russia. Let's just see if that's true. So let's.
The Russiagate issue was sort of like the idea that that Donald Trump was was sort of a Russian spy working with the Russians while he was president. It's a huge story that has turned out to be completely untrue, and many people knew it was based on untruths from the beginning.
Correct. But if these guys they should have some pro-Russians or I guess anti-Russian. Would it be anti-Russian? Now I'm confused. Okay, so
it's confusing.
It's confusing, yeah. Russia.
They're pushing the idea that
Russiagate.
Here we should see some headlines where they're pushing the idea that Trump was in cahoots with Russia on the side of Russia.
So here we go. Here's the first one. Can you guys see this over here?
Russiagate.
Obama, Hillary caught in Russiagate scheme by Durham. Caught. That means did something wrong in a Russiagate. Pushing Russiagate, right? Let's go to the next one.
Yeah, these are recent ones though.
Yep. 7 years later, media admits Russiagate was fake. Hillary personally greenlit false Russiagate. Collusion, Russiagate FBI agent caught in bed with Russians. Okay, here we go. Something on Rachel Maddow. Maddow's outrageous defense of Russiagate coverage. Defense of Russiagate. So here they caught her. They go back later on, and she's saying, "Well, this is why I covered it this way." So that sounds pretty, doesn't sound like pro Russiagate or whatever you call it, like that. It sounds like they're not really okay. We'll keep going though. Keep going. Adam Schiff called out live on The View for Russiagate lies. Russiagate lies. Right there. It says it right there.
So you're claiming
Jimmy Dore, did you look at that? Did you here's what you did. You just said, oh, my audience is going to love the fact that they're this and this and this, but facts be damned. Facts be fucking damned, bro. So here it is. I'm showing you, and all I'm doing is just putting in titles and just looking at what's being said. So it's absolutely wrong. That's my biggest takeaway here. He's the one I really disagree with. As far as it goes, RFK, I want him to do well. I want him to be free to speak what he's got. Even if I don't 100% agree with all the things he says, there are some things I do agree with him on. And I want him to have that open platform to be, you know what I mean? He deserves that. Everyone, including Mariana Williamson also, she should be on the debate stage as well, So that's all I got so far right now. So what do you think about what I'm saying?
It's interesting. You're kind of saying that on these two topics, what was it, the Russiagate and what was the other? The first one that
okay, so Russiagate and lockdowns.
The Russiagate and the lockdowns. Yeah. You're kind of saying that actually you're kind of claiming that Krystal Ball has the same sort of political stance or ideas that Jimmy Dore does, but Jimmy Dore is attacking her, saying she didn't.
Yeah, I think that the difference is her position is what I would call nuanced. It's, there might be in certain cases she might feel, that like for instance, in the case of the COVID, the vaccine, she might feel like, oh, it was helpful, or it was a good idea, right? But at the same time, she was against the lockdowns, or she was against not allowing kids to go to school. Okay, now the most devastating thing, and I'm going to see if I can find it right now because
This
I
is you have a really great angle here. I really like it.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious what other people think,
Yeah,
because we're not actually watching these videos from Breaking Points, so we're just kind of going based off the headlines, and I think that's pretty good evidence for maybe for their position, but is it evidence for her position? What maybe Jimmy Dore needs to go more into depth of why he thinks Krystal Ball held these positions that he
yeah.
disagrees
I
with,
mean,
besides the vaccine issue.
just be honest. It's okay if you don't agree with Crystal, but just state things that are factual about breaking points instead of smearing them. So, but I know this is the most important thing I wanted to
No,
show you.
while you're typing that in, yeah, I just want to make sure people put a comment down below on what they think about this. Is Jimmy Dore's stance? Is it justified? Um, you're kind of claiming that Jimmy Dore was actually sort of lying or
Well, I
exaggerating
just proved it.
things.
I don't think it.
Well,
I just proved he lied. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
I mean,
there's some sort of lie there. It doesn't
in
sound
a sense,
accurately.
you potentially, I would say you potentially did prove it. I think
Yeah,
we'd have to watch the videos and watch
sure, that's
her
true.
her
Yeah.
perspective.
Because we're only looking as far as the titles go. So maybe
Yeah.
on the actual details, but usually the title's a pretty good example of what they're trying to convey. Sorry,
RFK
it's
Jr.
almost there.
Wants to come back on the show, so we're going to have that in our first week.
It was such a smear. RFK Jr. said personally he wants to come back. Right there, they just said it. Okay, let's watch the next part.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and he has a big trip to the border scheduled. So he reached out to me, and by the way, he encouraged me to share some of our exchange with you. He said he was grateful for coming on. This is the kind of exchange I had at the dinner table every night growing up. I had fun, and I'd love to come back. So we'll get that in the works.
I'd love to come back. This is the kind of exchange we have at the dinner table. I'd love to come back. Directly from the horse's mouth. Directly from RFK. Thanks for having me on. I want to come back. They're going to have him on again. They talked for 49 minutes. You know what? He made this thing about, okay, there was this big part in there where they were like, oh, you don't need to cut him off because there's no commercial. There's no commercial. He mentioned that, right? He took a 9-minute clip. Now, if it's just 9 minutes and they're talking about COVID, or no, excuse me, about vaccines, and then the 4 minutes go on, and then she's like, oh no, we only got 5 minutes left, right? So 4 minutes have gone by, and then I've only got 5 minutes left. That makes the viewer think that, oh, it's that doesn't sound very good. They didn't really give him an opportunity to speak. Yeah, but that clip came from the 49 minutes where she talked about all kinds of stuff, right? They totally allowed him to say all kinds of things. So now when we have that context that there's actually a longer clip that's 49 minutes, sounds like they gave him plenty of time to express his ideas. And the thing is this, when you don't know if it's they had to go or if he had to go. Do you ever think about that? Maybe he was running out of time. Maybe he's got a plane to catch. But I would say if you give somebody 49 minutes to speak, I think you've done a pretty damn good job. That's where I stand, and I rest on that, bro.
You're making a really good argument, and you're really kind of ripping Jimmy Dore a new one. Is kind of what I would say right here on War Radio. So everybody, leave your comments down below. I mean, you're kind of blowing my mind in a sense. I do want to say though that Krystal Ball clearly interrupted and clearly cut off the presidential candidate, the guy who's running for president. So only when it came to the one topic. On the other topics for the whole other 40 minutes beforehand, she really didn't cut him off. So
I agree with you. Actually, I do agree with you.
Okay, yeah. So I think her failure. That was her kind of, she's kind of overstepping because she has a strong biased opinion on that topic.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's that fine line of like, you should be able to. I will say though that some of the times that she did that, it was because, I felt like he wasn't answering the question that she had asked. But sometimes that's okay. Like it's still, you should give a little bit of leeway there, right? It's like, I mean, you let him speak, right? So I agree with you. I think it wasn't, but I think there was times when he sort of interrupted her as well. So, but it is what it is.
Your approach have differed.
My approach would have been
Please interrupt him. Please interrupt him.
Which means what?
Okay,
which
good.
means
Listen, I don't want to get bogged down in this because
you're in over your head.
Because you're in over your head and you have no idea what you're talking about. I just want to make a bunch of bullshit statements about how you're wrong, and then when you're about to show me that I'm wrong, I want to say I don't want to talk about it anymore.
There's one more thing I wanted to mention. Okay.
Okay.
In Jimmy Dore's take on it, he kept saying, sort of like, Krystal Ball's not stupid, but like, how would you explain that? Like she's not with it, or she's, her take is wrong. She didn't have the facts. He's got the facts, and he knows what he's talking about, and she doesn't, right? Here's the really weird part. Let's just assume for a second that that's true, that she doesn't know anything and he knows everything. I'm going to make a really important point here, which is this, is that the person who's doing the interviewing, they do not have to know everything about a certain subject, right? It's like if I'm interviewing a musician, I don't need to know everything about music, like all the different facts about a certain thing. I don't need to be a doctor to interview a doctor, right? She is asking him to explain his platform or where he's coming from. That's it. She doesn't need to be an expert in anything, right? So I know that might seem a little unfair, but I mean, of course, if she has that knowledge, that's a bonus. Like that's a great thing. But I don't think it's a requirement that the interviewer has to be smarter than the person you're talking to. That's stupid. The point is, I'm done.
It's kind of like you're saying, thinking back on Jimmy Dore's show, he does kind of get more and more kind of more extreme, and this does happen with people, especially when they're dealing with news. They're kind of neutral, or they have an opinion, but then they see that they get more clicks. The more extreme they get, the more angry they get, the more excited they get, the more dramatic they get, the more kind of smear merchanty kind of stuff, the more kind of National Enquirer angles they take. And that's what we've seen the mainstream media do a lot, is they lie, they come up with untruths, they exaggerate things, they have a strong bias because they get more viewers that way. They make people angry, or they get people to they attract an audience that agrees with their way of thinking, and that gets a lot of clicks and a lot of attention, and then you get a lot of advertisers. So that's kind of the problem with advertiser supported media. And so maybe that's what Jimmy Dore is kind of running into, is that he's seeing, when he hits this angle really hard, he gets a lot more attention.
He gets a lot of now I'll give you, I want to ask you this. Here's in contrast. Okay, so someone who's like completely, I think, is opposite of Jimmy Dore, even though they might have similar takes on certain things. But it's Joe Rogan. If you watch Joe Rogan, there's certain things he says you might think, oh, he's kind of on the right, certain ideas, but there's some things where like people, like his own audience, would be mad at him. Like he's actually said he doesn't like Trump. He's more pro DeSantis, right? So there's things that he openly says whatever he feels, and he doesn't care if there's a pushback. He's rich, he's got plenty of money, right? And the thing is that that's how it should be. Like, you just be honest, I don't care what your take is, as long as you're, and so, I don't know if he's totally lying about stuff, but I sure as hell, when I pointed the titles that Breaking Points had on there, that didn't look too good. It didn't sound like Russiagate. Didn't sound like they were anti-COVID or anti-vax. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm saying? So I don't know, man. I like Breaking Points. I feel like they've done a pretty damn good job. So that's
that was a great presentation. You got me thinking, and I think you got a lot of
man. I appreciate that.
You're gonna have some of Jimmy Dore's fans probably coming at you a little bit on this one. So, So we might have to do a follow-up.
God, I do not care. You know what I mean? Look, if you don't like what I got to say, oh, well, you know, to hell with you. You know what I mean? I got my opinions, and I don't have a big platform. What do I care? So bring on the hate. I love it. You know what I mean? You don't like me, good. Tell me why. You know what I mean? I'm all about that, you know, so it's all good. In fact, the fact you commented, if you said something negative about what you didn't like what I had to say, I'm all happy about that, because that just means you're watching, man. It just means you're watching what I wrote. It got you, you know, so upset you're gonna say something. So I'm down with that. At least get a reaction. Let me make a point too, man. With Jimmy Dore, it's like, dude, I totally get why he does what he does. I know it sounds like I'm being negative to Jimmy Dore, but dude, like, it's money, bro. Like you got a channel, you got to say certain things. You're trying to get that ad revenue, man. You want the views. So, you know, he does that, and he's smart about it. He's got good thumbnails. I mean, you know, he's not a dumb person. I am not trying to put him down.
But he should really be careful not to cross that line into like lying about people or lying about people's positions, if that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
And I have kind of seen him do that a little bit. Maybe next episode we'll talk about the John Fetterman thing. I mean, I've seen him say some things that kind of that seem exaggerating, like, you know, in a way that's not really, I guess, funny or something.
Yeah. So that's cool. That'll be another show for another time. So.
Yeah, that was really good, man. I mean,
thanks, man. All right. Well, that's you want to go sign us out, man? Like and subscribe or whatever.
You know your stuff. Yeah, definitely like and subscribe and leave us a comment what you think down below for sure.
All right.
This is More Radio signing out.